Hi folks, and welcome to this episode of Michael's 3D World. We're back with the Ender 5. Now, I've had the Ender 5 for about 2 weeks now, unboxed and up and running, and maybe a little less than that, probably at 2 weeks. And I'm ready to do some modifications to it. Why? Because I can't leave well enough alone. Now, what I did do is go onto the internet and went on YouTube, and I searched out all the Ender 5 mods I could find. And I like to do that just to see what improvements are people making and why are they making these improvements. And I think I've picked the best improvements. I'm going to share those all with you now. And I'm going to put everything that's I did to this is going to be either in links to it into the comments, or not the comments, the description below in Thingiverse, or it will be Amazon links or links to other people that sell products for these machines to get exactly what I did to make the exact modifications that I've made here. So follow along and let's see what I did and let's see why I did it. Let's jump in right now. Let's move this printer over to the surgeon's table. That's what I'm calling it now. Let's do some operations on this thing and show you why I did what I did, and we're going to do some more. Alrighty, we're on the surgeon's table. Let's show you some things that I've already done and some things that I think are good that you might need to do if you own one of these. Now, the first thing I would print, see this little red part right here that I've got the cable hooked to? The first thing I would print when I get this machine would be print this strain relief, because this cable wiring coming off the table is not supported in any way and has to move up and down, and that puts a lot of stress right here on the joints where it's hooked up. So this here is easy. It takes one little screw, as you can see right here, that's in already a pre-drilled hole in your machine, and you just slide that on, put that screw in, zip tie your cable in place, and now it's got support and it won't move. There's another strain relief, and the only reason I haven't hooked this one up completely yet is because I'm not done. This is a strain relief for this upper piece here, and it's a nice little piece. It just snaps right in place. It's actually well designed. Links for all this will be down below in the comments or in the description. I keep wanting to say comments, I don't know why. But that one has slots through here that you can put zip ties through. But I'm not quite done with this part of it yet, so I'm going to let that be as it is for now. Another simple mod is this little cover. It's a printable cover, and it covers up the electronics on the back side. So when you're up here trying to operate this thing, your fingers aren't touching anything back here. And I like how that turned out. But the roller, I really like this roller. This setup, like I said, all the things for Thingiverse will be in the description below. It's got two little ball bearings. The roller sits right on here, moves very smoothly, lets it come up and up through the feeder without any issues. So I really like that setup there. That's actually really nice. Now, one of the ones I really like that turned out really well, these bed supports here. Now I've seen several different types of bed supports. I've searched them, quite a few of them on Thingiverse. What I like about this one is it uses 4 bolts to connect all these together and bolt it together to this bushing that's already here, which is a nice firm versus the ones I've seen that zip tie. Then I've also seen this one up here, the ones that just zip tie up around this. Well, this has a friction fit. Let's see if I can get you in here. It's hard to see up in here. It's all blocked. But it has a friction fit that actually sandwiches onto this plate. And it pushes snugly onto that plate right here. But I tell you what, made this end very stiff. If without this supports under here, this bed had a lot of flex. And when you're going to wipe it down with some alcohol like you do between prints, it, just made you feel uneasy because it flexed so much. Now it feels like it has so much support. There again, these will be in the comments below. Links to show you where to get those so you can print those yourself. Now, everything you see here that I've printed in red, I did on this machine. I let it print its own parts, which is really nice to do. Now, one thing I still don't care for so much, and I have to figure out something, is this wire management is kind of a mess. There's a cover you can print to cover this up, but I'm going to wait and do that after I'm done with all of my modifications. And then I probably will print that cover so it sits here and hides all that. But not yet. What we're going to do today now those are all the mods that I've done so far. Pretty simple mods. Print them, put them on, use them. Now we're going to get into some of the electronics. Now this does not have a silent board. And because it doesn't have a silent board, I can't leave well enough alone. You guys know me already. I put silent boards on 3 of the 5 machines I have over there. This would be number 4. The only reason it isn't on all 6 of my machines is because 2 of them came with silent boards already on them. The CR10s came with silent boards. This one does not. Now the cool part about this, I did have a couple of extra. After I had my Ender 3 V2 board go out, within 2 months of owning it, I had an E drive go out on it. And troubleshot that. You'll see that in some of the other videos. If you go through the history of my videos, you'll find out how I discovered what was wrong there. But, so I bought a few extras because you never know. If one goes out, and I hate being down for 3 or 4 days, waiting on parts to show up when I could be printing stuff. So I ended up with 2 extra boards, and I put one in the Ender 3 Pro recently. You've seen that video by now. And I put the, I'm going to put one in here because this CR5 can handle the 4.2.7 board. It's a direct replacement in this machine. You just got to flash it with the right firmware, and you're up and running. So let's get in here. I'm going to show you what I'm going to do to install two things I'm going to install. Let me get some stuff. I'm going to show you some stuff I'm going to do. One of the things we're going to do today is we're going to install a Raspberry Pi. This is a Raspberry Pi 3B+. And what this will do is this will allow me to wirelessly connect to this machine, which is really nice. And on this, with this little Pi, we're going to install us a little tiny fan inside this case as well to keep this Pi cool and comfortable. You don't need to. It's just something I'm going to do on this one. The other thing I've got is the Ender, not the Ender, the 4.2.7 motherboard. Unopened package. We're going to break that out today and we're going to hook that up. The other thing I'm going to do with this Pi is I'm going to use a buck converter and I'm going to direct wire the Pi to my power supply so I don't have to run a separate power source. I'll show you how to do that too. We're also going to be installing not 1, not 2, but 3 buck converters, and I'm going to tell you why. And I happen to have 3. That's my last 3 actually. I'm going to run a power supply or a buck converter to power down from the power supply from 24 volts roughly to 5 volts for the Raspberry Pi. I'm also going to run a buck converter for my A20 flex fans. These are FLX fans, I'm sorry, A4 by 20. They're 40 by 20 millimeter premium Noctua fans. I'm going to be putting on, as you've seen me do before, a new hot end cover. And this hot end cover has a fan here and a fan here, and they're both Noctua fans. They're really quiet. If you've heard this thing already run in the intro video, and it just has a whining sound. Plus, these fans are crazy noisy. And you know me and noisy fans. Right now, you can probably hear a little bit of something behind me. I've got 3 printers running in the background. If they didn't have quiet fans and silent boards on them, it'd be a big distraction. You just hear that thing whining and carrying on in the background. That's why I like having these quiet, because I do some videoing down here and I like to have those things running. So we're going to install this as well. This machine, I'm going to get it up to this point, but in another video, I think I've decided I'm going to put a Micro Swiss direct drive, all metal hot end direct drive kit on here. They're about $100, and that's gonna change this whole thing about this machine. It's gonna get rid of this ridiculously long Bowden tube, because this Bowden tube has to be that long because it has to come. This thing has to come clear over here. With a direct drive, no Bowden tube. But anyway, that's in another video, not this video. Anyway, we're gonna get busy hooking all this stuff up, wiring it all in, and I'll bring you guys right along with me on how I do this, because I think it's going to be a pretty cool setup when I'm all done. The machine's going to be quiet. It's going to be one switch, powers everything on. It's going to be some really nice quiet fans. And the new fans, the Noctua fans, yes, they are cheap. They're $12, $13, $14 a piece. But I've already had a few of these fans go out inside of a couple of months. They start making some noise. They might rattle a little bit, and you thump them, and all of a sudden they get quiet. Well, guess what? That's your fan going bad. That's a cheap fan. These fans are not cheap, but they also have a lot of hours of service that are lined up with it. And people have asked me, well, they don't turn the same RPM. They don't do this, don't do that. They're more efficient, and they do turn the same CFM or put out the same CFM of air, if not more. So let's jump in. Let's flip this thing on its back, which we should be able to do with ease, so we can gain access to the bottom side of this. Now I'm going to get you down here, and we're going to jump in, and we'll take a look at what's going on in the guts of this thing. Okay, we got this thing on its back. Now, you guys have asked me before, what kind of tools do you have? What kind of things do you do? Well, I'm going to show you. These will all be, links to all this stuff will be in the description below. But I got bolt kits, a socket head cap screw and a flathead cap screw, or flathead screw, stainless metric kits here that I like to use. I've got this IFIXIT tool kit. My son's an IT guy, and he turned me on to this, and I've never looked back. These things are awesome to have. I've got some 24 gauge wiring. I've got a little socket set here for, and the only thing I use here is the 6mm for taking the hot end apart. I've got wire strippers, some needle nose pliers, the little nippers that came with your printer, some regular pliers, X-Acto knife if you need them, a little flashlight, and I got my heat shrink or heat gun for heat shrink tubing, and I got my solder gun along with some solder. Then I've got the original kit that came with the machine with my little my own personally designed tool holder to hold it. And then I've got miscellaneous other things here. You know, you got extra tips, extra Bowden tube, extra little zip ties. I keep all the leftover wires from the Noctua fans that I've installed, because I do use the wiring, and I do use some of the ends occasionally. But anyway, you hang on to all that stuff. Why not? Get yourself some nice little containers, store it away. Oh, and I got a voltmeter. You got to have a voltmeter, because we're going to have to adjust the butt converters down to the proper voltage for each device that it's running. Got a little hot glue gun here, nothing special. Because these little butt converters, I like to take these plastic cases that I've printed out and glue them up to the machine. That way it holds everything in place where it belongs. Alright, let's take this bottom off and see what we got on the underside. Alright, in order to change out the motherboard here, first thing you got to do is get rid of all the hot glue they put on it. Every one of these little connectors that you got to take loose has hot glue on it. And I found that the easiest way to remove the hot glue is just take a pair of needle nose pliers and pinch it, and you can pull it right off. If you try to pull these connections apart without removing the hot glue, chances are you're going to destroy your connector, and you might ruin actually a perfectly good noisy motherboard. So every one of these connections has hot glue on it. They do this because of the shipping, to keep the connections from just falling off. So just gently get in here, and what I found is just a little pinch and a pull, and that glue comes right off. Alright, now we're going to remove the motherboard screws. There's usually 4 of them. Let's see how many this one has. There's one right here between these 2 plugs, one down the bottom middle here, and there should be one more, I'll bet, because it's not moving yet. There it is right here. Now you got your motherboard free. Let's go ahead and open up the other package here. Now we got our 4.2.7 motherboard that we're going to stick in here, and it'll go back in the same orientation as your other one just came out. Make sure your little sockets line up here. As you can see here, they've actually put hot glue on these pieces as well. There we go, all the hot glue is removed. Now looking at this, I'm just now seeing that this might be easier. This may be easier to put all these wires here and here in, with the motherboard out, where I can get at this a little easier. So I think I'm going to do that. I think I'm going to make life a little easier on myself, and then and only then will I swap the plugs out. Now that we've got all these wires connected in the proper fashion, one at a time, removing them here, putting them on here, we're going to do the same thing here. Remove these one at a time, carefully and gently unplug. and plug them right into the new board in the same location. Now one thing you will have here is, you see here the motherboard cooling fan is plugged in right in series here. On your new motherboard, it's not that way. The new motherboard, it's plugged in right over here. It'll be, there's two sockets right here next to each other. And it'll be the one closest to this row of sockets. And then this other one with the blue and yellow, if I can get it undone here. Blue and yellow will go out here. Blue and yellow goes to the left. This hot end fan here, I mean the motherboard fan, I'm sorry, will plug in right there. Because this board is just a touch different than the original one. But the E, Z, Y, and X are the same. Same way down here. They're all clearly labeled. And your wiring harness is all clearly labeled, which is nice. Because now I can go back in here and plug all this in. So now we got the Y cable. Now we've got it all hooked up. Don't be afraid to put your old motherboard into the same case your new one came out of, and just stick that aside, because this is a good backup board in case something was to go bad with this board. You've got a backup board that you can plug right back in. Everything we're going to do here today, you can plug this right back in and not miss a beat. It's just going to be noisy again, but do all the same things it did before. All right, now that we have that installed, we're not going to put everything back together yet because I got more work to do under here, but I want to make sure everything's working as it should with the changes that I've made. So we're going to go ahead and gently upright this thing. It'll be fine just like this for a little bit. Now what I have, I've got an SD card that I have put, it's called a .bin file with the new firmware that I need to flash the hard drive with, or the motherboard with. The motherboard does not know what machine it's currently hooked to. I've copied this off Creality.com. I'll show you how to do that right now. All right, we've got the what do you want to call it? Creality.com/download site opened up. We're going to go to the Ender series, click once. We're going to go to the Ender 5, click once. And we're going to go to the Ender 5 and 5S 4.2.7 mainboard zip, 32-bit zip. You're going to click that once, and it's going to download just like this. Once it's done downloading, you can open it up. What you're going to see here is another folder. You're going to open that folder. And if you have the BL Touch or other versions, select that one. This one here I'm using has none of the other features, so it is strictly a plain Ender 5. So here's your .bin file. But you're going to select that file and you're going to drag it over to where you have your SD card, your micro SD plugged into your computer. Drag it in there, dump it in, and you're ready to rock and roll. And then this is what you're going to do next. Okay, now that we've done that, we've installed the card. We're going to hook power to it now. And when you power it on, your screen's not going to come up as normal. It's going to flash the firmware, so it'll take a second or two longer for it to come up. Let's see what happens. What it's doing now is retrieving the information off your SD card. It's saying, okay, this new motherboard is telling me it's an Ender 5, and this is how we're going to operate it. See, that took a little longer than you normally have been seeing come up on your... It says Ender 5 ready. Now let's just for fun, let's home it. Let's see how quiet it is. We'll go to Prepare, Auto Home. Look at that. Silence is its name. Now you can really hear the fan up here. That's cool. That works. Everything seems to be functioning fine. Reason you want to do that, before you start doing all this other stuff I'm going to be doing to it, make sure what you just did works, so you're not trying to troubleshoot a whole bunch of different things. Now that we know this works just fine, now I want to go ahead and we're going to go back in it. We're going to swap out this fan shroud with my new Noctua fans. But first I got to do some wiring, more wiring underneath to make this happen. And first and foremost, let's get this bad boy in place, because I really want to get my Raspberry Pi hooked up wirelessly to my computer so I can send programs over without using the SD card. All right, we can go ahead and power it back off now, since we know everything works. Okay, we're going to hook up this Raspberry Pi, but first thing we got to do is get power for it. Now what you can see here, I've picked up a negative terminal here off the power supply and a positive terminal off the power supply, and brought them right up in here to the buck converter. Positive in, negative in. Positive out, negative out. Sorry, I had my finger in the way. Positive out, negative out. Now we're going to have to tune this thing so that it has just 5 volts of power. These are my output wires here. I haven't done anything with them yet. They're just hanging here. I'm going to go ahead and power this thing back on now, and we're going to turn the buck converter down with this little pot screw right here. You're going to have to, I think it's counterclockwise, I'm pretty positive it's counterclockwise. We're going to wind this thing out until my voltmeter reads 5 volts. And then we'll have the proper power coming out of here for my Raspberry Pi. Now one thing I do like about this case is it gives me tons of room to work. And you guys are probably asking again, maybe you are, maybe you aren't. How'd you get that little, I got these little, they're buck converter cases I printed off of Thingiverse. Links in the description below. Anyway, they're nice because they have little zip ties here on each end, so you can actually choke strap this so it doesn't, it takes all the stress off the joint. It's in there just nice and static now. Nothing's going to affect the way how that's connected. These wires can wiggle around a little bit and it doesn't do anything inside. And then it has this sweet little cover that you can snap right over the top of it, boom, and close it off. Now some people might be saying, yeah, these things need to be cooled off, they need to stay cool. Well, there's some air in there. I've seen people take heat shrink tubing over these buck converters and just heat shrink them in so they're fully enclosed. No air at all, and they work just fine. But I like this setup right here. This is just clean and neat. So I'm going to go ahead and put you back on the stand. I'm going to put the power back to it and dial in that buck converter to 5 volts. Now we're going to go ahead and power this on. Saw that fan kick on. See some lights kick on. Some things move around a little bit. No big deal. You see the buck converter light glowing red. It means she's got juice. Now we're going to go in here on the outside where the power's coming out. And we're going to put a positive on the positive and a negative on the negative. And we'll see if I can do all this so you can see my voltmeter. See, it's right now it's at 22 volts. I'm going to get on this little pot screw here with my little baby screwdriver. Oh, come on. It's really hard one-handed. Two-handed, I should say. We're just going to dial that all the way down to 5 volts. There we have it, 5 volts. It's kind of cool. That light was really bright before, and now that it's dialed back to 5 volts, it's a lot less bright, but it's still there. So now we have our power ready to go to our Raspberry Pi. Now we'll go ahead and power it down and unplug the power cord. And we're off to powering up the Pi now. Now if you've already purchased the Noctua fan kits, it will come with a bunch of wires, excess wires and whatnot. There's one on there that I've already cut the other end off of. I'm using the 3-prong end here. It just has 3 wires coming out of it. The other thing you want to do here is these little alignment ribs. Take your little nippers and just take those right off, because that will allow you to then plug in to the outside 2 terminals of this Pi. And we're going to use the black and the yellow on here and not the red. And what that's going to do is it's going to give us, the black is actually going to be positive, the yellow will actually be negative. That's okay. That's how we're going to make our connection here. And I'm pretty sure, I hope this will fit I'll double test fit it right here. I haven't done this type of pie case yet. Well, as you can see, I had to do a little trimming on the case here. There's that little spot missing out there, just so I could get this to fit. Now, if you have a different plug-in that you want to hook up into your Pi with, that's fine. Or you might want to print off a different case. But yeah, this one here, I'll now let it fit. And you won't even see this because this will be on the rails. So I'm going to install it. So now we have the power wires coming out of there. That should work all right. Okay, I just want to catch you up on what I've got going on here. So I use that little plug that I trimmed the thing off of, trimmed the little tabs off of, so I could use the black for the positive and the yellow for the negative. That just makes me a quick connect here. Plus, for my Raspberry Pi fan here, I've used this terminal, number 1, for positive, and number 5 on this side for negative. So now when I turn the power on, as you can see, this little light lights up red. This little light here is flickering green, which means it's working off the software that I've installed on it. And as you can see, the Pi fan is running. Only thing would be left to do is to hook my USB cable in, and we'll get to that here in a minute. But anyway, I've just got things, I don't have anything soldered together here. Just get these wires twisted together right here and here, just to make sure everything's functioning right, and to make sure that my Octopi is working on my computer. Now, I did steal a little bit of I put a little bit of hot glue on here to keep all these connections firm, so now they can't wiggle or move or come loose on me. Stole that little bit from the Chinese, which they do on the these particular Creality machines. It's actually not a bad idea, just to make sure something that could come loose might come loose. Why let it? Now I've got it secured a lot better. Alright guys, let me see if I can catch up on where I'm at now. We did tap into the power supply here, positive and negative, 24 volt. Took those wires right in here to the buck converter, right? Soldered on my wires both in and out on the buck converter, dialed the buck converter down to 5 volts. That's 5.0. Now I'm coming out of the buck converter here and down and around, and I got this this is the housing that was on the original Noctua fan shroud. So now I've got that coming through here, and I snuck it through the vent on the side here. This is coming out so clean and neat. I'm so happy with it. Then it comes right to the side here. Now I've got this thing laid on its back still. Right to the side here, and goes right up. Let's go this side. Right into the Pi case, right? And that's got my power powered up. Now I'm going to tilt this back down flat. This is how it sits on the machine. So I've got the double rail Pi case locked in here. It's not going anywhere. And I've got it just off the bottom of this surface here, so I can pass the wire underneath it. Now the other tricky thing I did is I got to hook the USB port up to the front of the machine here. So I've got a 90-degree USB to mini USB right here. So it comes out, I got it going down in the trough here. Down in the channel, up, and I'm consuming all the extra cable. Up, 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 and I went up and around here, and back down the channel to the Pi case. Clean and neat as can be. No really exposed wires here showing. That's done. The Pi is hooked up. The Raspberry Pi is operational. I've got it connected wirelessly to my computer now. And I'll leave a link in the description below to my other video that shows how to hook a Raspberry Pi to your printer. It's actually easy if you follow it step by step. I've done it enough times now, approximately now 6 times. I'm getting better at it every time. So far, we've spent an hour and a half doing what I've done here with all these connections. I'm taking my time. I'm trying to make it neat and clean. I'm thinking it through before I start. But you guys can take my ideas and you can implement them. And you can probably do it faster than I did it. Also, the Pi fan is hooked up inside just like I showed you. It's all ready to rock and roll. When I flip it on like this, you can see there's a little red light that comes on inside the Pi. I can barely see it. It's in there though. But it's all up and running. Pops right up. We're ready to start printing. Okay, now we've got the Pi installed. That concludes this part of it and how I did it. Okay, now that we've got the Raspberry Pi all installed, wired up, looking really cool, nice, clean, neat, and well done. We're going to go to start putting the... That's a lot of words with nothing being said, isn't it? I got to start working on my dialect. I don't know, I got to start talking better. Anyway, what we're going to do now is we're going to take the fans that are up top here, way up top here on the hot end. We've got two fans, right? We got one that comes on, that's on all the time. That's these two red wires here coming out of the power supply, out of the motherboard. Those are on all the time. Those are running at 24 volt. We also have this blue and yellow here. Blue and yellow right back in here. This plug-in that we plugged in when we transferred the wires over. That is the fan that kicks on when your first, second, or third layer is done. However you have your slicer set up. For usually it's once the first layer is done, then the fan kicks on and runs the rest of the time the print's going on. So you want to have this to be able to be turned on and off. And right here we've got the blue and yellow that we also want to take down to from 24 volt down to 12 volt. So these Noctua, what I have here, these Noctua fans can be hooked up to this new cooler that's going on there. So these set on there like that, and one of them sets up here like this, and they hook up to the hot end up there, and they just look a lot cooler, and they work pretty nice, and they're so much quieter. Anyway, since I've done everything else on this machine in red, I also printed this off in red as well. This was also printed off on this machine. Why not? This machine has printed all of its own upgrades. All of them, which is pretty cool. You can do that. You can print off all these upgrades before they're done. The only upgrade that this has not printed off is this butt converter here and these other two cases that I'm going to have, because I had a bunch of my printed off before. I had some machine time available, so I sat there and ran off a bunch of them. And lo and behold, I'm down to my last three. And when I get my next printer, I'm going to have to print off some more. Anyway, let's get busy, splicing in some wires, and I'll show you what we're going to do. We're basically going to do the same thing I did here. We're going to take the power coming off the board here, go into a butt converter, and then up to the hot end. And then the same way with this blue and yellow, we're going to come off of here into a butt converter and up to the hot end. Really easy. And the cool part is I'm going to add a little bit of wire to this. I'm going to cut this wire, and I'm going to add some wire to it. Same way with this red wire. I'm going to just pull these out, go right straight into a butt converter, and have new wires come into the butt converter. Easy peasy. Let's get started. I'm going to put you in time lapse. You don't need to watch me solder and cut. I'll run you through everything when I'm done, and you can see how I have it laid out. Okay, let me catch you up on what I've done here. I've taken the blue and yellow wire coming off the motherboard here. That's the plug-in for your fan. This is for your tip cooling. And I've got it coming in, positive here in this case is yellow, negative is blue. So positive, negative in, positive, negative out. And that goes right back in, ties right back into the wires that go up to the hot end. Same thing here. I took 2 wires here, 2 new wires, plugged them in here, came into my power in, positive end, negative end, came out, hooked onto my original wires that are going back up to the hot end. This is for the fan on the hot end that's on all the time, anytime the power is on. So now we've got all that wiring done. We're connected back up to where we could run just like we did before I added these in. But the cool part is now what I'm going to do is I'm going to dial these back to 12 volts. Just like I dialed this one back to 5 volts to run the Raspberry Pi, I'm going to dial these 2 back to 12 volts to run the new Noctua fans that I'm going to install right after we're done buttoning up this. So let's go ahead and I'm going to try to do this live with you and dial it back so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, now what we're going to do is power this back on. Should see both of these light up. Now this one you're not going to see light up. You saw it flash there. Well, that's because that only comes on after the first layer is done. But we're going to go ahead and do this one. So now we got that at 12 volts. Be careful not to touch anything else under here. Now I'm going to go over to my computer and I'm going to turn this fan on via my Raspberry Pi, via my Octoprint that I've got installed. And you'll see this light come on. See, now that one's on. And I'll go ahead and do the same thing with it. We'll dial it in the same way, down to 12 volts. There you can see we got them dialed down to 12 volts there. Hope you can see that. So they're both dialed down to 12 volts. Now we can power it back off. Snap our little covers on. Now under here they wouldn't necessarily need covers because this whole thing is a housing. Sure does look professional though, doesn't it? Now that's a nice, clean, neat wiring job there. I don't care who you are. That's clean and neat. Now we can button up the bottom end and we're done. All right, our last mod we're going to do on this machine for today, and we're going to call this video a wrap, is we're going to replace these fans with some Noctua fans, and we're going to replace this Bowden tube with some Capricorn Bowden tube, which is a much better Bowden tube than this, can handle temperature better. So we're going to pull this out and put some new stuff in. First things first, let's remove this cover. It's just the 2 screws, I believe, here. We'll go ahead and remove this fan as well. Now what I'm doing is I'm bringing this hot end up. I've got all the fans disconnected right now. I'm bringing the hot end up to 200 degrees so I can take that tip out and remove the Bowden tube. We're at about 147 right now. We'll let it get on up to temp. And since we don't have a fan on here cooling things, we don't want to let it get over temped either. Now I have me a brand new Capricorn kit, which has all the fittings and everything inside that I need. Now you should be able to fit this all the way through. It should slide all the way through like that, no problems. You want to take the provided cutter and cut it to make sure you got a nice square end. Now what I'm going to do is screw a new tip up in here. We'll take it up till it bottoms out, just like that. And we'll back it off about 1/2 to 3/4 of a turn there. Then I'm going to take my brand new Capricorn tube and shove down in here against it while it's at temperature. And we'll put our lock in place. Push down real tight. It's good and tight. Then what we'll do is we'll turn that tip back up tight against that tube. What that does is that puts that flat, nice, beautiful, flat, square bottom you got there and puts it tight against that face of that. Now we can go ahead and turn the temperature off. We'll let her cool down. What that did is now everything's sandwiched up tight. You got the Capricorn tube tied up against that tip. That's very important to do. The one thing I didn't like about this original Capricorn, or this original tubing that came on here, it was all kinds of weird twisted bend. Look at that, it's kind of weird twisted. Didn't have a nice smooth bend to it like this is going to have when I'm done, because then I'll tie the wires up to it and it's going to look a little nicer. Not that I like the long Bowden tube, but if you're going to have a long Bowden tube, make sure it's a Capricorn one. It's just a more accurate tube. Now I'm going to go ahead and take this fitting off the extruder as well. And put the new Capricorn, the one that came with my Capricorn kit. Okay, now it's time to wire up the fans to the wires that are coming from the bottom end that we did all that buck converter work on. Now the easy way to remember this, folks, is the red and the black from down below go to the lower fan, because this is the fan that's on all the time, and this is hooked directly to the power to the motherboard and is on all the time. When we flip the switch on, this fan is going to come on. The blue and the yellow are going to go to the upper fan. Now, to try to remember which one the blue and the yellow hook to on the black and the red, this is what I use to remember it, is that, this is going to be silly, but red and yellow, you know, in crayon world, red and yellow make orange, black and blue makes a bruise. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and solder these wires all together, put the heat shrink tube on, put this back over it, hook it to the Bowden tube with some zip ties, and this build will be complete. Well, I haven't put all this back on yet, but I've got it soldered, so if I've done it right, this fan should come on just like that. It did. And then when I go and turn it on at the computer, I should be able to cycle that one on. And just like that, the fan is on. Now the noisiest fan I've got is down underneath here cooling the power supply. And I may have to address that, but not today. Today I want to get back up and printing. So we're going to go ahead and power it off and finish tidying up these wires. Alrighty, we got it back in its home spot where it does all its printing magic. We're gonna power it on one more time now and home it, heat it up, rehome it. We're gonna level the bed twice. I like to level the bed while it's hot. And then we're going to get after some more printing. Alright, she's all running again. Now the noisiest thing on it is the fan on the power supply. I'll bet you I'll be upgrading that to a Noctua quiet fan pretty soon. For sure, for sure. Looks like everything's printing pretty good so far. Can't complain there. It's nice and quiet up top, no whining. Excellent. It's a job well done. Now I'm just printing off a couple of these little buck converter housings just to see how it turns out and make sure everything fits, and I'll print me a bunch more because I didn't realize I was going to use up the 10 that I had over these last few machines. But some of you guys might say these buck converters are just you don't need to use as many as you're using. Well, that's the way I want to do it, so I'm doing it that way. You can do it your own way with your own machine, I guess, huh? Hope you guys enjoyed this video. It's been a lot of fun. We got this thing wirelessly connected to my computer now. It's met all the upgrades. I think the only upgrade I got left to do will look a lot like this. It'll go right up here. It's a micro Swiss all metal hot end. I bought the complete kit. I think I'll do that next. So you guys stay tuned to part 3 of the Ender 5 series of videos, and you'll get to see how converting this to a direct drive works. Basically, you're taking the stepper motor that's over here, and we're going to move it over here, and the Bowden tube then is just strictly a feeder tube to help guide the filament through to the direct drive. So far this seems to be working fantastic. I like it. We're going to do a lot of printing, and before I do the direct drive though, I got a lot of printing I want to get done on this machine. I want to see how it does. So far so good. I like it. Well folks, I hope you find that helpful. I hope you found this enjoyable to watch. I did have to do one thing, and I'll tell you what it is. On the stepper, that when I put this all together, the extruder was running backwards. Yes, that's sort of, you heard it correct here. If you didn't watch it all the way to here, you're going to struggle, and you're going to wish you'd have watched my video all the way to the end possibly. because the extruder motor was running backwards. No joke. And there's ways to update it and fix it. You can do it in the firmware. I didn't find anything on YouTube with this issue. And I thought it was quite strange. But I figured it out because they had stuff on YouTube that showed reversing a blue and a red wire, just one of the phases to make it work. And guess what? On these Crealities, there are no blue and red wires hooked to these stepper motors or the drivers on the motherboard. So what I did, I pulled the... Let me show you. Let's go to the whiteboard here. I'm going to show you something. Just draw you a little picture here. So you have your little plug, and it has 4 connections. Your wires are coming off, and one of these wires had the little band around that said E for extruder, right? So it said on there to swap a red and a blue wire. Well, these wires are all black. They have little hash marks on them, little deals on them and stuff like that. Anyway, what I did is I tried just swapping these two. And basically you get underneath that little white metal, that little white clip, and you can hold it open just a little bit, and you can slide these wires out and swap them. So I did that. All the motor did was just stutter a little bit. So then I swapped it back going, okay, I'm going to screw something up. But then I decided, well, maybe I'll swap these two. I swapped those around. And same thing. I'm like, well, what's going on here? So then I got to doing some more research. Couldn't find anything else. I'm like, oh, what the hell? Let's just try something. So I swapped that one and I swapped that one. So they're opposite of the way they were from the factory. So this one became this one. This one became this one. Same way over here. This one became this one. This one became this one. I swapped the wires. And lo and behold, it's running in the right direction now. And it's printing. And it's working just fine, because when I first fired it up, the filament was going backwards and pulling it out instead of going the right way. I thought, well, that's really strange. So something about the 4.2.7 board and the firmware that you can download from Creality that has the extruder motor for the Ender 5s backwards. Anyway, that's the way I fixed it, because I'm not good at any firmware yet. I haven't learned a lot about that. Someday maybe, just not today. And I wanted to get my machine running, and that was one of the easiest ways to get it running. The firmware is also the easy way, and it's actually the more preferred way, but the machine doesn't know any difference right now. It just knows electrical signals are electrical signals, and now they're just going backwards, which is going forwards. Doesn't matter. Alrighty, well, that's it for the Ender 5 upgrades for the moment. I think I've got just about everything done on it I want to do to it, other than the all-metal hot end and direct drive. I've got all the quiet fans up here. I've got the Raspberry Pi. I've got all its bracing support, strain reliefs, all that stuff's put in place. It's working pretty fantastic actually right now. So we're gonna call it a day there. And I hope you guys had fun watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Give me a thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button if you want to see other videos coming up after this. And don't be afraid to use those links down below to go get your products, and the exact same products I use to do all this stuff with. Everything, literally everything that I used in this video will be in the links below, that you can buy the same things and do the same upgrades as I did. If I seem to have missed something, if you guys saw something in the video you'd like to see, hey, what's this, what's that, want a link to it, don't be afraid to throw it in the comments. I try to read every one of my comments, and I try to answer every comment. It gets to be a little busy sometimes, but I try to get to them. Sometimes it's not the same day or the same hour you do it, but within less than a week I'll get to it, and I'll put some information out there. I try to get to it sooner than that. I usually check it about every day for comments. Well, folks, that's it for this one. I'm out. I'm Michael, and I'm out.